Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. In this one, we're gonna be teaching J-Lo the most important lesson she's ever gonna learn, is to understand pressure. Let's get into it. All right, so if you haven't seen the first couple videos of J-Lo, make sure you go back and watch those, because between now and then, there's been about 3 or 4 training sessions where all I did was reinforce what we showed her in the very first video. I haven't done anything new with her. I'm trying to use J-Lo to show you guys all the first times that we do things with her. So today we're going to build some depth of understanding to pressure. Now there's going to be 3 types of pressure. The first type of pressure is going to be rhythmic motion. Then she needs to understand steady pressure. The third type of pressure is her understanding rhythmic pressure, where now I'm using the stick and my intention to drive her and move her around the pen. There's 3 parts with every session with her. There's the warm-up, then there's kind of the working set, what we do in the middle where it's challenging her. And then the third part of the session is the cool down. So in the beginning, what you guys didn't see is when I first get her haltered up, because she's still a little hard to catch, I take her out and we eat grass, okay? And that's our warm up. And so I believe that you can catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And so the idea is that if we can take her out and do something that she wants to do, which is enjoy some grass, we'll go do that. And then we're gonna come in here and I'm gonna kind of stir the pot a little bit. If you don't do that, things are gonna start burning at the bottom. Okay, and basically we have to challenge her confidence so that we can get things done. Like right now, if I just pet on her, I'm still not gonna be able to trim her feet. Then the last part of the cool down is I'm gonna take her in my arena and let her kind of get to a bigger space. Right now it's a little sketchy getting her from point A to point B, making sure she doesn't pull away. So that's kind of how I'm gonna structure the lesson. And so now let's go ahead and get into it. And so I like to start off with just doing some basic petting. And we've already reviewed this with her with the stick and string. So this is something she already knows. But you can see from the last video, she's much better about things rubbing on her legs. And then she's gotten pretty good about the stick and string being thrown over her. So we're starting to teach her to do some circles. I don't have her circle very long. I'm teaching her to recover. And that's so much better than it was 5 sessions ago, because she used to get really stiff and bracy with the halter on the bring back. So it was kind of easy enough to get her feet moving, but it was hard to get her to shut it down. And that's something that we got to be able to practice, is kind of bringing her life up, and then can we recover and can we slow those feet back down? So I want to start putting that in there sooner than later, and then we'll draw her back in, let her get relief in here. There's another good blowout. So I release her a lot to coming back in and petting. So after doing some work of moving her feet, then we kind of come back in here and let her get relief. And so I'm releasing her. There's a reason behind that, is I'm releasing her to the pressure of things touching her. This is that rhythmic motion I was talking about. And this is where she's got to get comfortable with this, okay? So I'm pretty happy with how that's going. So let's do a little bit more challenging tool, and we're gonna grab the flag here and see where she's at with the flag. So first time she's been exposed to the flag, she's already snorting. So again, she has had very little handling, so everything new is gonna be the first time for her. And until she gets a little further along, she's probably not going to give us a whole lot just by sleeping in her pen overnight. So we'll just kind of introduce it to her here, let her look at it. One strategy that you can use when you're kind of getting a horse used to something. And so again, this would, for me, fit under the category of rhythmic motion, which means I want her to be confident with it, okay? So the difference between rhythmic motion and rhythmic pressure is my intention. Rhythmic motion can have a lot of energy, but it doesn't mean I'm asking her for anything. Rhythmic pressure hopefully has low energy, but my intention is there, asking her to yield. And horses are very perceptive to this, because this is how they interact with each other out in the pasture. And so one of the things I want to expose her to is getting used to energy versus intention. So right now the flag has energy, and she's reading that as pressure. Hold on, folks. So that was a little bit too much for her. And that's kind of her go-to move when she gets bothered, is she decides she needs to leave town. There we go. Now, what I don't want to teach her is that when she has a big explosion like that, is that gets her relief from whatever thing was bothering her. She needs to learn to try to understand it and get curious about it, like right there, and then it'll go away. Give her a chance to have a little letdown here. But it's situations like that, that's why I say it's a little sketchy leading her from her pen to here, because I have to go through our playground, what we call our playground, which is also a little pasture. And, you know, if she got away in there, it could be pretty messy pretty quick. So there we go. Now she's thinking about leaving, so I'm going to go ahead and retreat by getting further away from her here. Very good. It's also why we're in a round pen. You know, that's why I would release her to walking around my big arena. You know, imagine if I tried this outside, she probably would have been gone, pulled the rope out of my hands there. This would be considered for me more horse development, you know, meaning she at this moment needs somebody who's skilled enough to teach her these things. And my job is to get her gentle enough where lots of people would have the skill level they need to do things with her. Maybe, hopefully even ride her. And that's kind of the difference, you know, of when a student needs to learn something, you know, it's like where I need to show an owner something or teach people something, versus when a horse needs a professional. And because of her level of difficulty at the moment, she really needs a professional that has skills with taming and, you know, more feral horses, so that we can set things up for success. Sometimes a horse requires somebody who's handy enough to get the job done, and using their skill level of things that they've been working on for years and years and years to be able to teach a horse things. So J-Lo needs a little horse development at the moment. And that's also kind of an interesting thought, because you might be surprised to know that the #1 adopter of Mustangs is first-time horse owners, which is probably not ideal. And unfortunately, I've seen some first-time horse owners that have gotten Mustangs that had to be put down because they didn't know how to get a horse this gentle. They thought they were going to bring them in and just feed them and sit in the round pen and read a book, and eventually the horse would get really gentle and they'd be able to trim their feet and ride off into the sunset. And horse training is just a lot more difficult than that. You know, you have to expose a horse to things there. Now she's letting down. But you got to do it in a constructive way. So you can see she wasn't wrong for too long, and now we're back to her having a blowout there, releasing. So horses on their body have different parts that are usually easier to touch at first. So what she has shown me over and over again is that the easiest place to touch her initially with something is her face, her forehead. And this could just be how she is, or it could also be because that's where she's had the most time spent with her on things. And then as you get further back on her body and down, it becomes more difficult. Her belly's hard to touch, and her legs. And so what I'm going to try to do is make contact with her head here, and then use this safe place, so to speak, to work my way on her cheek and then down her neck, instead of me just going straight for the withers or straight for the shoulder or the hip. Now, the other thing you're going to see me do is I'm going to alternate between doing a confidence thing and doing a yielding thing, okay? So when I'm training these horses, so this has all been about confidence. Now I'm going to switch to doing some yields, and I'm actually going to use the flag to do some yields. So I'm going to work the flag here, and what has changed right now is my intention. So you see I'm looking down, I'm driving her hindquarters. Now I'm going to switch to driving her forequarters. And so the flag is a tool that she needs to get comfortable with, because sometimes the flag is friendly and sometimes the flag is driving. And the difference again is my intention. And so now she's on a circle, and my intention is for her to trot, okay? But the flag is gonna have some energy. And I'm gonna keep working this until she can get okay with it, because it's behind the drive line right now, which is right behind her shoulder, kind of if you drew a line right where your cinch would go on a saddle from her withers down to where that cinch would be, right behind her elbow. That's kind of the drive line. And because this is behind the drive line, she's just hearing me say go. But my intention is not to canter. So as she relaxed and she got in harmony with me there, we'll give her a little break. So even though that flag was being noisy, it had some energy, I wanted her to read me. See here, I'm asking her to drive. And I don't care if she gets a little bit desensitized to it. That's kind of also what I'm going for here, because I want her to get comfortable with it. And those of you that are on my Patreon page, what you're seeing is me go through a lot of the fundamentals that I show in those videos on Patreon. So if you're not on Patreon, you might want to get on there, and I break down each of these steps into little bite-sized pieces that hopefully everybody can go out and try with their horse, because I really want this to be a horsemanship program that everybody can do. You know, find a way to puzzle solve, find a way to make what you're asking your horse to do achievable. But with this series that we're doing, JLo, I really hope you guys can kind of see that as we improve our skills and we can add value to horses through good horse training and progress them along, we're going to increase that horse's value. Everything you teach your horse has value. If they lead really good, that has value, more than a horse that doesn't lead. If they're easy to catch, if they're easy to trim their feet, trailer load, you know, and then some moves have more value than others. So things that are harder to teach, like maybe advanced riding maneuvers, like flying lead changes or pee-off or cutting or a spin or a big slide stop. Those things might have more value because maybe it takes more skill to teach those than it does something like this to a horse, okay? And so as we teach her skills, we're adding value to her in a literal dollar amount. You know, we're adding value to her as she gets easier and easier to handle and more gentle. And I think that's pretty cool. Something else I think you could consider is, what is your value as a rider, okay? Craig Johnson shared with me this one time. He said, you know, every rider has a value dollar amount depending on how valuable they can make a horse. So if one rider can get a horse to be worth $5,000, they're a $5,000 rider. If they can get a horse to be worth $25,000, they're a $25,000 rider. And it kind of can go the other way too. If you put a $5,000 rider on a $25,000 horse, that horse's value might go down a little bit as it goes. There we go. All right, so I'm liking that. That's pretty good. Maybe I'll just pet her with it here before I switch tools. So now we're gonna, you know, so I went from some yielding, now we're gonna go back to some confidence building. And you see she's getting better about it coming from the ground. This to me is a great example that we have here right now if she's reading me and not the flag. See, the flag still has some energy and some movement. Again, I'm trying to make it achievable. I'm not trying to scare her. You know, I mean, I could, you know, work this thing like crazy and see if she could handle that, but that would be pretty scary to her. But this is, I'm doing more with it than I did at the very beginning. So now we're gonna do some steady pressure, confidence building, and some yields. So you guys have seen me use this lariat rope in other situations, and we're gonna see if we can kind of get her used to this. So right now I'm just gonna kind of toss it on her here, make sure I could get it back off once I got it on. So the first kind of game that I'm gonna play with her here with the lariat rope is, can she just wear it and just be okay with it being on her? And when I'm doing this, I'm really thinking about her eventually accepting a saddle, and especially her accepting a farrier, crawling underneath her and getting those feet trimmed. So I'm gonna put it around her hip and let her just pack it around like this. And this is something that I do when I'm preparing a horse to rope off of. And this is just part of my colt starting program. You know, it's like, it doesn't take a lot of time to just get a horse used to something touching them and wearing a rope. And I think it was Tom Dorrance that used to say there's not a bad place on a horse to hang a rope. So I do want her to wear this. So I am putting a feel on it, but I don't want her to move off of it. I want her to wear it. So if she trots forward there, I'm just trying to keep it in front of her and trying to keep a feel on it. I just want her to get comfortable with it there. Now, where I'm really in the back of my mind trying to get to is putting this rope around a hind leg. That's really where I want to be at with it. But I don't want to that could be too much of a challenge for her, and so I'm trying to build up to that with these little baby steps here. Ooh, I like that. Let me pull on that rope a little bit. And if you're ever doing this at home, always keep your lead rope shorter than your lariat rope. That way you can always turn that horse in and kind of face up if you have to recover a little bit. Good, she's letting me put a feel on it now and still just walking along. So I just want her to wear it right now. I'm not asking her to give to it. I just want her to wear it. Boy, I think what I'm gonna try to do, the situation's kind of present itself, I'm gonna see if I can get her to back into it and let her wear this around her barrel. One more step, there we go. Now today I'm gonna do most of these rope things off her left side, which means tomorrow I'll do most of these things off of her right side. Whatever you do on one side on a horse, you always gotta do on the other. Now I'm just gonna put a little feel on it, and I'm looking for her to get comfortable and get relaxed. That's more comfortable and relaxed than it was, so I'll go ahead and take that slack out. And this is one of the reasons why I like doing this with a lariat rope. So you're looking and chewing there? I like doing this with a rope more than just throwing a saddle on her, because I can control it, right? If she's getting a little bronchi on it, I can hold it like this and keep tension there. If she gets relaxed with it, I can go ahead and drop it down. I'm just putting a little stronger feel now. And I don't want her to completely stop. I want her to find forward under that pressure because that's what we're gonna need riding. So there's kind of some layers and levels to what I'm doing here. I don't want her to just stop with it. Very good. So again, right now I just want her to wear it. I'm not asking her for anything. I'm just managing it, keeping it up. And I got it above her hock because when the horse kicks out, if it was down further on her leg and she kicked out, it would really jerk my hand really bad. But when it's down there, she can recover from it pretty quickly. Very good. So again, I'm just managing it. I'm not trying to stop her with it or anything. I just want her to get exposed to something tightening on her. Now, if those of you who are new to this channel, one of the things you got to understand about horses is that steady pressure is innately the most scary thing for a horse to get okay with. So literally, having a farrier try to trim her feet is probably one of the hardest things we could ask this horse to do from a confidence standpoint. Or putting a saddle on them and tightening up a cinch and asking them to be okay wearing a saddle. These are all things that can be super, super scary to a horse innately because their DNA says resist a predator if they've got a hold of you and have a feel on. Getting her used to steady pressure, this lesson that we're doing today is why I'm saying this is one of the most important things you're ever going to get your horse comfortable with. Really good, I like that. So now I'm just gonna see if I can get her to stop with it. So I'm just gonna put a feel on the lariat rope and also on the halter. And just see if I can get her to think about stopping. Just keep that feel right there. So stopping and relaxing equals relief. There we go, there's the lick and chew. That's what she just understood there. Kicking and resisting it did not equal relief. The pressure stayed there. When she finally stopped, settled, thought about what was happening, she got relief. Okay, let's do that again. So first is just manage it, make sure she's okay with it. Now I want to put a little feel, see if I can talk her into stopping, see if she learned anything from the previous time. Nailed it. Awesome. Very good. So this for me is a taming test. When I say the word tame, the question is, in order for these horses to get along in a human world with fences and gates and horse trailers and hay nets and farriers trimming their feet and vets working on them, they need to be able to handle and understand pressure. And so it's our job to prepare them to be able to handle that in what I would call a get-to situation. When it's farrier day or the vet day or trailer loading day, that's the got to. It's like, okay, we've got to have this horse ready. But I take it very seriously, the preparation that we're going to do to get ready for that point. And so she's doing really well accepting that and getting to that point. Now we're going to take a look at a front foot. And the front foot should be easier. The reason I did the hind foot is I just had the rope in a good position to go ahead and put it on her there. So I'm going to put a loop around this just so it doesn't pop off if things get a little western out here. Because what I'd hate to do, one way that I could really mess this up today would be if she panics and the rope comes off of her. Okay, if she panics and she gets relief from the rope coming off of her, I would have just taught her, get scared and get bothered and panic and flight from fear, and that's how you get relief. And now that's going to be her go-to move. But if I put her in these situations and I teach her that if she just gives to pressure, that's going to equal relief, she's going to get better and better at it. So what I'm doing is I'm leading her, and then I'm putting a feel right before that foot leaves the ground and just teaching her to yield that foot. Because in order to trim her feet, she needs to be able to yield that foot. You can see she's not totally thrilled about it. Good. Super. Really good, J-Lo. Now we're talking. So that's all the further I'm going to go with it today. I'm just going to get her used to those steps. And I'm going to do one more thing with her today that I've been wanting to teach her. This horse holds a lot of tension in her rib cage, and she gets pretty stiff in her head and neck. And so what a lot of people think about if they're stiff in their head and neck is, well, do a lot of, flexing with the halter, right? So This is something I taught her from the last video, is starting to ask her to lower her head down here. Just kind of the baby steps of that. And then I also, one thing I didn't show you guys that I did teach her, because she has a brace in her head and neck, is standing back here and just starting to get a little bit of lateral flexion right there. Atta girl. Okay, but that will only take you so far. And then you got to go to the next place, which is getting the rib cage to turn loose, because if a horse is holding tension, it's usually through their rib cage. So I'm going to kind of tap her lightly here, and I'm going to ask her to bend her rib cage around me. And I like this. I was a little bit worried about how worried she was going to get about something touching her here. But after doing that lariat rope stuff, you can see this is fairly easy. And she's getting soft through her head and neck here. But I call this the 3-circle game, and I'm just asking her ribs and hip to push out on that circle. And this is exactly what I would do to soften a horse if I was riding and they got a little scared and a little tense. I would ask them to bend their rib cage and yield their hindquarters slightly, do that partial disengagement, just like that. So that went really well. Normally I would try to not touch him here, but I am trying to expose her to this pressure. See how I'm getting a reaction on this side? And so instead of not touching her, being like, wow, look how good she bends around me, I want her to understand this pressure, okay? She's not scared of this because of how hard it's touching her. She's scared of it because she doesn't like anything touching her there. And so I just want her to get a little more comfortable understanding this pressure. And there's probably a lot of people watching this video that won't quite understand this, but if you've trained some horses, you know what I'm talking about here. Because if I don't do this step, she'll end up being like a horse that you feel like you got to ride with your legs sticking out to the side, because if you accidentally bump her on the side, she's going to goose out from underneath you. And I don't personally want to ride a horse like that. Just a simple phrase that most people have a hard time understanding, but maybe also even accepting, is that horses are not scared because of the pressure. They're scared when they don't understand the pressure, okay? So my job out here is to get her to understand pressure. That is 100% what I'm focused on today. And there's a million different ways I could do that. I'm showing you a handful of them here in this video. But my job is to help her understand pressure, and I think you could see it there, where I was touching her with the stick fairly firmly, and she wasn't bothered by it because she started to understand that I was just asking her to bend and give her rib cage around there. I'm having so much fun. Let's go ahead and do it on the other side too. So you can see she's accepting that so much better. If I had touched her belly when we first came out here, she would have jumped out of her skin in here doing that. And I know that because I accidentally did it the other day, okay? And so I went, okay, I'm gonna save that one for the video. And I thought there was gonna be a lot more there. But because we got her to understand steady pressure with that lariat rope, it really paved the way for this. When that rope was around her belly, it really set me up for success to help her understand things touching her here. Because previously I could not touch her under her belly. The other day I went to brush her, and I was basically able to brush her on the top and then just halfway down her rib cage. Any lower than that and she was ready to leave town. So I got the results that I was looking for with her understanding that lariat rope. I'm super happy with this. We're gonna move into our cool down now, where I'm just gonna take her for a walk around the perimeter of my outdoor arena, just get her used to a new environment. We're just decompressing, cooling down, recovering from kind of some of the emotions that came up with some of these more challenging exercises. Then I'm gonna turn her loose in her pen, and I'm gonna keep reinforcing this throughout this week, and we'll bring you back when I got some new stuff for you guys. So thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you on the next one.